Imagine your son's lavish wedding. The father-in-law grabs your homemade tiramisu, smashes it on the floor, and bellows it's peasant garbage, unfit for his dogs, right before you reveal it's a $15 million family secret. Hit like if you think justice tastes sweet, and stick around for Elena's epic takedown. Thank you, Eliza, for letting me share this. It's been emotional reliving it, but I'm proud of how I stood up for my family's legacy. Let's dive into what really happened that day. The microphone feels heavier than it should in my trembling hands as I stand before 500 guests in their designer gowns and $1,000 suits. Behind me, the massive screens that Harrison insisted on for his cinematic wedding experience glow with a paused video, one he doesn't know is coming. At my feet lies the remnants of my tiramisu, the one he just called peasant garbage, before hurling it to the marble floor with such force that mascarpone splattered across my navy dress. The one I sewed myself because I couldn't afford the boutique prices his world demands. Ladies and gentlemen, I begin, my voice steadier than my racing heart, I'd like to share something special about that dessert Harrison just destroyed. I glance at my nephew Dante behind the AV booth, and he gives me the slightest nod. It's made from my family's amaretti recipe, the same recipe he just called peasant garbage before throwing my dessert to the floor in front of 500 guests. The screen flickers to life behind me, and I don't need to turn around to know what's playing. I can see it reflected in Harrison's face as the color drains from his cheeks like water from a broken dam. 3 months ago, I was stirring my Sunday gravy in my tiny North End kitchen when Marco burst through the door with news that made my heart soar like it hadn't since his father died. The wooden spoon clattered to the stove as he swept me into a hug that lifted my feet off the worn linoleum. "Mama, I'm engaged." His smile could have powered the entire building. "Her name is Charlotte, and she's everything." I cupped his face in my flour-dusted hands, searching those warm brown eyes that mirror my own. At 32, my Marco had finally found love, and it radiated from every pore. "Tell me about her, caro mio." He pulled out his phone, showing me picture after picture of a beautiful blonde woman with kind eyes and a genuine smile. They were hiking, cooking together, laughing at some inside joke. Real happiness, not the posed perfection I'd seen in his previous relationships. "She's a teacher, Mama, 3rd grade, and she wants to meet you, really meet you. I've told her about your cooking, about how you held our family together, about Sunday dinners and your stories about Nana Lucia." He paused, suddenly nervous. "Actually, I want you to meet her family too. Her father owns Blackwell Foods, he'll love your cooking." My heart swelled with a pride so fierce it brought tears to my eyes. After years of watching Marco work himself to exhaustion at his accounting firm, seeing him struggle to fit into a world that didn't value where he came from, he'd found someone who wanted to know his family, who wanted to know me. When do I meet this angel who stole my son's heart? 2 months later, I was in that same kitchen, stirring the very sauce that would change everything, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Rossi, this is Rebecca Chen from Meridian Foods. I hope you don't mind me calling directly." I lowered the heat under my pot, glancing at the faded photograph of my great-grandmother Lucia that watched over my stove. "How can I help you, Ms. Chen?" "I'll be direct. We've heard about your amaretti recipe through certain industry channels, and Meridian Foods would like to make you an offer. A very generous offer." My wooden spoon stilled. Industry channels? I'd never shared this recipe with anyone outside my family. "I'm afraid there's been some mistake. My family recipe isn't for sale." "Ms. Rossi, I don't think you understand. We're prepared to offer $15 million for exclusive rights to your amaretti recipe. This could change your life." 15 million. The number hung in the air like incense, heavy and intoxicating. I could pay off Marco's student loans, buy him a house, secure his future. But then my eyes found Lucia's photograph again, her stern expression, her hands that had kneaded love into every meal, her voice whispering the secret measurements that died with each generation who broke the chain. "Some things aren't for sale, Ms. Chen. This recipe has been in my family for 5 generations. I understand the sentimental value, but..." "No, I don't think you do." I turned off the burner completely. "This isn't sentiment, this is legacy. This is my great-grandmother's hands guiding mine, her voice in every stir of the spoon. You can't buy that. But as I hung up, a cold dread settled in my stomach. How had Meridian Foods heard about my recipe? The answer began to reveal itself the night before the wedding, in the mahogany-paneled private dining room of Harrison's exclusive country club. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic rainbows across tables set with china that cost more than my monthly rent, and I felt like an imposter in my best dress, navy polyester, that I'd worn to every special occasion for the past 5 years. I'd spent the entire day preparing traditional dishes for the rehearsal dinner: my grandmother's braxiole, handmade ravioli, and yes, the amaretti tiramisu that had been simmering in my soul for 62 years. Charlotte had specifically requested my cooking, saying she wanted her family to experience real Italian tradition. But as I watched Harrison sample my braxiole, his expression shifted from polite interest to theatrical disgust. "How quaint, Elena," his voice carried across the room, designed to be heard by every guest. "Such charming peasant traditions. Of course, we've hired a proper French chef for tomorrow's reception." The word peasant hit me like a physical blow. Around us, conversations quieted as Harrison's friends, people with names like Worthington and Ashford, tittered behind their wine glasses. I felt Marco tense beside me, saw Charlotte's face flush with embarrassment. "Dad, please," Charlotte whispered, but Harrison was just getting started. "I mean, it's adorable, really. This rustic approach to cuisine, very authentic, I'm sure, for what it is." He set down his fork with finality. "But tomorrow is about celebrating refined tastes, sophisticated palates. We can't have our guests thinking we've gone common." That word, common, landed like a slap. I'd spent 40 hours preparing these dishes, pouring 5 generations of love and tradition into every bite, and this man dismissed it all as beneath his notice. Later that evening, as I stood in the country club's industrial kitchen cleaning up the remnants of my peasant feast, my nephew Dante appeared in the doorway. At 28, he'd inherited the family's artistic eye, channeling it into photography and what he called digital detective work. "Annalena, we need to talk." His usually cheerful face was grim as he pulled out his phone. "I've been documenting the wedding for Marco, but I found something else." He showed me a series of photographs, Harrison at various restaurants over the past 2 months, always with the same companion, a sharp-suited woman I didn't recognize. But it was the documents Dante showed me next that made my blood freeze. "Trademark applications," he explained, his voice tight with anger, "for Amaretti Signature Tiramisu and Blackwell's Amaretti Collection, filed by Blackwell Foods." My hands shook as I stared at the legal papers on his phone screen. When? 2 weeks after Marco announced the engagement. And look at this. He swiped to another document. A preliminary agreement with Romano's restaurant group to license the recipe for their chain. They're planning to mass-produce your tiramisu, Aunt Elena. The kitchen spun around me, but they don't have the recipe. I've never. Aunt Elena, he's been planning this for months. These trademark filings are dated 2 weeks after Marco announced the engagement, and look at these photos. He's been using your son to steal from you from the very beginning. The truth hit me like a freight train. Every Sunday dinner Marco had brought Charlotte to, every time I'd cooked for them, every moment I'd welcomed this girl into my heart, Harrison had been watching, planning, stealing. I found Harrison on the country club's stone terrace, smoking a cigar and staring out at the manicured gardens that probably cost more to maintain than most people's salaries. The moonlight cast his face in sharp relief, making him look like the predator he'd revealed himself to be. "Harrison," my voice cut through the night air like a blade. He turned, and for a moment, I saw surprise flicker across his features before it settled into smug amusement. "Elena, enjoying the evening? I do hope you're not too offended by my comments. Sometimes honesty can sting." "I know about the trademark applications." His cigar paused halfway to his lips, then he laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Ah, well, I suppose there's no point in pretense now, is there? You've been planning this since the engagement." "Planning, my dear Elena, I prefer to think of it as strategic acquisition." He took a long drag of his cigar, the ember glowing like a demon's eye. Blackwell Foods is, shall we say, experiencing some financial difficulties. Your little recipe could be quite the lifeline. It's not for sale. Oh, but it will be. His smile was razor-sharp. You see, Marco's career at Pemberton and Associates depends entirely on recommendations from certain board members. Board members who happen to be very close friends of mine. One word from me, and your son's accounting career dies a very public, very permanent death. The casual cruelty in his voice made my stomach turn. You would destroy my son's life for a recipe. Steal, my dear Elena, I prefer acquire. Blackwell Foods is bankrupt, and your little recipe is my lifeline. You'll sell, or Marco's career dies tomorrow. He flicked his cigar into the pristine garden, the ember dying in the darkness. Your choice, peasant, but choose quickly. The wedding's tomorrow, and I'd hate for there to be any unpleasantness. Back in my small hotel room, still wearing my rehearsal dinner dress, I sat on the edge of the bed staring at my phone. Rebecca Chen's business card lay beside me, her offer echoing in my memory. $15 million. Harrison thought he held all the cards: my son's career, my family's future, the power to humiliate us in front of 500 guests. He'd planned this theft with the precision of a military campaign, using Marco's love and Charlotte's innocence as weapons against me. But Harrison Blackwell IV, in all his arrogant superiority, had made one crucial mistake. He assumed that this peasant woman was as powerless as she appeared. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Rebecca Chen's contact information. One call could change everything. One call could turn Harrison's weapon against him. The clock on the nightstand read 2:47 a.m. In less than 18 hours, my son would marry the daughter of a man who tried to steal our family's legacy. In less than 18 hours, Harrison would stand before 500 guests, confident in his victory. Harrison thinks he holds all the cards, but he doesn't know about Rebecca Chen, and he's about to learn that this peasant fights back. I pressed call, and as the phone rang in the darkness, I smiled for the first time in months. Tomorrow's wedding was going to be unforgettable. At 7:30 a.m. on what should be the happiest day of her life, Charlotte stands in my hotel room doorway wearing a silk robe that costs more than my monthly grocery budget. Her face is streaked with tears, and her hands shake as she clutches a manila envelope against her chest. Mrs. Rossi, please. Her voice breaks on the words. I know what Daddy's doing is wrong, but I'm begging you, just give him what he wants. I'm still in my nightgown, having barely slept after my call with Rebecca Chen. The irony isn't lost on me. This beautiful girl pleading for her father's theft while I hold the power to destroy him completely. But looking at her tear-stained face, all I see is Marco's happiness hanging in the balance. Charlotte, sweetheart. He showed me the papers. She thrust the envelope toward me with trembling hands. The trademark applications, the licensing deals, all of it. I told him it was stealing, that you've been nothing but kind to me, but he said. She dissolves into fresh sobs. He said business is business, and if you don't sign these papers this morning, he'll tell everyone the wedding is canceled because your family tried to extort us. My maternal instincts war with my fury. This girl has become like a daughter to me over these past months, and seeing her caught in her father's web of manipulation makes my heart ache. But the thought of surrendering 5 generations of family legacy to save face at a wedding makes my Italian blood boil. Please, Mrs. Rossi, I love Marco so much. Daddy says if you don't sign the papers this morning, he'll tell everyone the wedding is canceled because your family tried to extort us. Her voice drops to a whisper. He's already called the society reporters. They're waiting for his statement. I pull her into my arms, feeling her shake against my shoulder. Harrison is using his own daughter as a weapon, and the cruelty of it takes my breath away. But as I hold her, my resolve only hardens. Men like Harrison count on good people sacrificing themselves to protect the innocent. Not today. By 10:15 a.m., I'm standing in the pristine kitchen of Ashworth Estate, watching my life's work being dumped into industrial garbage bins. The head caterer, a nervous man named Timothy, won't meet my eyes as his staff systematically destroys every dish I've prepared. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Rossi, but Mr. Blackwell showed us documentation that your dishes weren't prepared in a certified facility. We could lose our license. Timothy's hands flutter helplessly as he speaks. The health department could shut us down. I watch my grandmother's Braxiol, the one that took me 6 hours to roll by hand, disappear into a trash bag. My homemade ravioli, each one shaped with the same technique Nana Lucia taught me when I was 7, follows into the garbage. The humiliation burns in my chest like acid. Those documents, I say carefully, when did Mr. Blackwell provide them? This morning. He said he'd been trying to reach you about the certification issues, but couldn't get through. Timothy's voice grows smaller with each word. He seemed very concerned about guest safety. Guest safety. The man planning to steal my family recipe is concerned about guest safety. I want to laugh, but the sound would come out as a scream. The final insult comes when they reach my tiramisu. The same dessert Harrison will destroy publicly in just a few hours. I watch 20 individual portions, each one a small masterpiece of mascarpone and espresso-soaked ladyfingers, slide into the garbage with a wet thud. "Ma'am," Timothy touches my arm gently, "are you all right?" I'm not all right. I'm furious. But more than that, I'm beginning to understand the true scope of Harrison's cruelty. This isn't just about money or recipes. This is about power, about putting me in my place, about ensuring I know exactly how small and helpless he believes me to be. I'm fine, I lie, watching the last of my contributions to my son's wedding disappear. Perfectly fine. The chapel at Ashworth Estate is a masterpiece of old-world elegance, with soaring Gothic arches and stained glass windows that cast rainbow light across the assembled guests. I sit in the front row, wearing my best navy dress, the same one Harrison splattered with mascarpone last night, and watch my son stand at the altar in his rented tuxedo. Marco looks like his father did on our wedding day 35 years ago, and my heart swells with pride despite everything. This is his moment, his happiness, and I won't let Harrison's poison touch it. But then I see Harrison lean close to Marco during the vow exchange, whispering something in his ear. My son's face, radiant with joy just moments before, crumples like paper. The color drains from his cheeks, and his hands begin to shake as he holds Charlotte's. Even from 20 feet away, I can see the exact moment my son's wedding day is destroyed. Harrison straightens with a satisfied smile, adjusting his platinum cufflinks as if he's just commented on the weather. The minister continues the ceremony, oblivious to the psychological warfare happening right before his eyes. Marco struggles through the rest of his vows, his voice barely audible. Charlotte notices, how could she not? And her eyes dart between her new husband and her father with growing alarm. When the minister pronounces them husband and wife, Marco's kiss is perfunctory, distracted. As the recessional begins and the couple walks back down the aisle, Harrison catches my eye and mouths a single word. Midnight. Later, I'll learn what he whispered to my son at the altar. "Congratulations, son. Your mother has until midnight to put that recipe on my desk, or your career ends Monday morning. Welcome to the family." But in this moment, all I know is that Harrison Blackwell has just weaponized the most sacred moment of my son's life, and the maternal rage building in my chest threatens to consume everything in its path. I find Marco during cocktail hour, hidden in a small alcove near the estate gardens, still in his tuxedo, but with his bow tie hanging loose around his neck. He's staring at his phone with the hollow expression of a man watching his world collapse. "Marco," I approach carefully, the way you might approach a wounded animal. "Caro mio, what's wrong?" He looks up and I see tears in his eyes, tears on his wedding day. "Mama, we need to talk." I sit beside him on the stone bench and he shows me his phone screen. It's an article from the Boston Business Journal. Rising accountant Marco Rossi under investigation for client fund irregularities. The timestamp shows it was published an hour ago. "This is a lie," I breathe, scanning the fabricated accusations. "Of course it's a lie, but it doesn't matter." Marco's voice is hollow. "Chef Martinelli just called. The interview I had scheduled for Monday, postponed indefinitely. Word travels fast in our business, Mama." My heart breaks for him, but also burns with rage at Harrison's methodical destruction of my son's reputation. "Marco, this is your father-in-law's doing. He's trying to force me to." "I know." The words come out flat, defeated. At the altar, he whispered that my career ends Monday unless you give him the recipe. He's already destroying me, Mama. Look at this article. It's everywhere. He scrolls through his phone, showing me the story spreading across social media, industry websites, professional networks. In the span of an hour, Harrison has systematically poisoned my son's professional reputation. Maybe, Marco's voice cracks, maybe you should just sign the papers. Is a recipe really worth destroying my marriage before it even starts? The question hangs between us like a blade. My own son, my beautiful boy, asking me to surrender our family's legacy to save himself from his father-in-law's cruelty. The betrayal cuts deeper than anything Harrison could do to me directly. You want me to give him the recipe? It's not a question. I want my wife to stop crying in the bathroom. I want my career back. I want to stop feeling like I'm drowning. He looks at me with eyes full of pain and desperation. Mama, he's going to destroy everything. Maybe if we just give him what he wants. I stare at my son, my proud, principled son, asking me to surrender to a bully. And I realize this is exactly what Harrison planned. Not just to steal from me, but to turn my own family against me, to make me the villain in my son's story. The reception hasn't even officially begun, and already I can feel the whispers following me through the estate gardens. Guests cluster in small groups, their conversations stopping abruptly when I pass, then resuming in hushed, urgent tones behind me. I'm standing near the champagne fountain, trying to process my conversation with Marco, when Mrs. Pemberton, wife of the senior partner at Marco's firm, approaches with the predatory smile of someone delivering delicious gossip. Elena, dear, such an interesting story in the business journal today. Her voice drips with false sympathy. Of course, we all know how these investigations can spiral out of control, especially when there are family complications. Before I can respond, she's moved on, leaving me with the distinct impression that she knows exactly what family complications she's referring to. I catch fragments of conversations as I move through the crowd. Shopping her recipes around for months. Using the engagement as leverage. Harrison says she's been quite aggressive about it. The picture becomes clear with horrible precision. While I've been reeling from his direct attacks, Harrison has been systematically poisoning my reputation among the wedding guests. Every conversation, every seemingly casual comment, has been designed to paint me as the greedy, grasping peasant trying to exploit my son's marriage for financial gain. I find myself cornered near the rose garden by Charlotte's aunt, a sharp-faced woman who clearly relishes her role as family enforcer. Harrison's telling everyone you've been shopping your recipes around, using Marco's engagement as leverage. He's making you sound like a gold digger, Elena. She delivers this information with the casual cruelty of someone discussing the weather. Such a shame, really. Charlotte spoke so highly of you. The past tense hits like a physical blow. Spoke, as if I'm already dead to this family, already written out of their story. I excuse myself and retreat toward the estate's stone terrace, needing air, needing space to think. But even here, I can hear the whispers carrying on the evening breeze. Harrison hasn't just attacked my recipe, my son's career, and my family's reputation. He's systematically destroyed my character among everyone who matters in Marco's new life. As I stand alone on the terrace, watching the sun set over the manicured gardens, I pull out my phone and scroll to Rebecca Chen's contact. Our conversation from the early morning hours feels like a lifetime ago, but her words echo in my memory. The offer stands, Mrs. Rossi, when you're ready. I'm not just ready, I'm armed for war. Harrison wants to play games with my family's legacy. He's about to learn that this peasant has more power than he ever imagined. The wedding reception is about to begin, and I have a video to debut. I'm standing in a quiet corner of the estate gardens, trying to find a moment of peace before the reception begins, when my phone rings. Gerald Morrison's name appears on the screen, our family lawyer for 23 years, the man who handled my husband's estate, who's guided me through every legal document since I became a widow. Gerald, thank God. Please tell me you have good news about Harrison's trademark applications. The silence on the other end stretches too long. When Gerald finally speaks, his voice carries the weight of professional defeat. Elena, I'm sorry, but Food Industry Weekly just published an article calling you the mother-in-law profiteer. Harrison's legal team is claiming you've been grooming Marco's relationship to steal Blackwell trade secrets. The words hit me like physical blows. I sink onto a stone bench, my legs suddenly unable to support me. What are you talking about? I'm not stealing anything, he's trying to steal from me. They're claiming you've been using Marco's engagement to gain access to proprietary Blackwell information, then shopping competing recipes to their rivals. Elena, they have documentation showing you've been in contact with Meridian Foods. My blood turns to ice. Rebecca Chen's call, the one I thought was my salvation, has been twisted into evidence of my guilt. Gerald, that's not what happened. Meridian contacted me about my own recipe. I know, Elena, but Harrison's filed an injunction claiming the recipe contains trade secrets Marco learned during family dinners at Blackwell's home. They're arguing you've been systematically extracting proprietary information through your son's relationship. I close my eyes, feeling the legal walls closing in around me. Harrison hasn't just stolen my recipe, he's made me the thief in his story. Can we fight this? Elena, Gerald's voice breaks slightly. The preliminary injunction was granted an hour ago. You're legally prohibited from selling, licensing, or distributing the Amoretti recipe pending a full investigation. And Elena, there's more. The article mentions federal investigators are looking into potential corporate espionage charges. The phone slips from my numb fingers, clattering onto the stone path. Federal charges, corporate espionage. The words echo in my head as I stare at the manicured gardens around me, this perfect setting for my family's complete destruction. The estate ballroom gleams with crystal and gold, 500 guests in their finest attire chatting over champagne and canapés. I should be proud. My son married the woman he loves in a ceremony that will be talked about for years. Instead, I feel like I'm walking through a minefield. I'm approaching the dessert table, hoping to salvage something from this disaster, when the catering manager intercepts me with the efficiency of a trained executioner. I'm sorry, Mrs. Rossi, but Mr. Blackwell has informed us that unauthorized food items violate our venue insurance. Mr. Blackwell has instructed us to remove it from the dessert buffet. He wants it brought to the head table later for a presentation. I stare at him, not quite processing the words. A presentation. The tiramisu you brought. Mr. Blackwell explained that it wasn't prepared in our certified kitchens, and our liability coverage doesn't extend to outside food preparation. His tone is apologetic but firm. He wants it presented at the head table during the evening's festivities. I watch in horror as staff members appear, carefully removing my tiramisu from the dessert display. The tiramisu I spent hours perfecting, each individual portion a small work of art, disappears from view with clinical efficiency. Please, I whisper, but my voice carries no authority here. Around me, guests continue their conversations, oblivious to my humiliation. Or perhaps not oblivious. Perhaps this is part of the show Harrison has orchestrated. The mother of the groom, reduced to begging staff not to throw away her food. I catch sight of Marco across the room, his face pale as he watches the scene unfold. Our eyes meet for a moment, and I see the apology there, the helplessness. But he doesn't move toward me. He doesn't intervene. He stands frozen between his new wife and his mother, and I realize with crushing clarity that he's already made his choice. Charlotte appears at his side, whispering urgently in his ear, her face flushed with embarrassment. She glances toward me once, her expression a mixture of pity and discomfort, before turning away. I am completely alone in a room full of people celebrating my son's happiness. At 6:30 p.m., desperation drives me to the estate's security office, a small room tucked away behind the main kitchen. I need those photographs Dante took, the evidence of Harrison's meetings, proof that he's been planning this theft for months. The head of security, a professional-looking man in his 50s, greets me with the kind of polite indifference reserved for difficult relatives at high-end events. Mrs. Rossi, how can I help you? I need to speak with you about the surveillance footage from the past few months. There should be recordings of meetings between Mr. Blackwell and... I'm terribly sorry, Mrs. Rossi, but Mr. Blackwell mentioned you might make accusations. Unfortunately, our system had a complete failure last night. No footage exists. The words hit me like a sledgehammer. A complete failure last night. Technical malfunction. These things happen with digital systems. Very unfortunate timing, of course. His expression doesn't change, but I catch the slight tightening around his eyes. He knows exactly what he's saying. What about my nephew's photographs? He was documenting the wedding preparations. I'm afraid Mr. Blackwell expressed concerns about unauthorized photography on the property. Something about proprietary business discussions being inadvertently captured. We had to confiscate all devices and delete any images taken on estate grounds. My knees nearly buckle. Dante's evidence, the photographs that proved Harrison's premeditation, the documentation of his meetings with potential buyers, all of it gone. Erased as efficiently as my tiramisu was thrown away. You can't do that, those were personal photos. Estate policy, Mrs. Rossi, clearly outlined in the venue contract Mr. Blackwell signed. We're simply protecting our client's privacy. I stagger out of the security office, my last hope of proving Harrison's conspiracy disappearing like smoke. He's been 3 steps ahead of me from the beginning, anticipating every move, every potential source of evidence. The hallway spins around me as the full scope of his planning becomes clear. This isn't just theft, it's a masterpiece of legal and social destruction, executed with the precision of a military campaign. Hiding on the deserted stone terrace, I collapsed onto a bench, still wearing my navy dress, now wrinkled and stained with the day's humiliations. The terrace feels like a tomb, heavy stone pressing around me, silence broken only by distant laughter from the reception. I'm staring at the manicured gardens, wondering how I'll face Marco tomorrow when my phone rings. Rebecca Chen's name appears on the screen, and for a moment, I consider letting it go to voicemail. What's the point? Harrison has destroyed everything. But something in me, maybe Nana Lucia's stubborn spirit, makes me answer. Ms. Chen, I'm afraid there's been a complication. Elena, our board has reviewed the situation. Harrison's lawsuit is a frivolous, bad-faith attempt at corporate sabotage. We're not backing down, we're fighting back. I sit up, my heart suddenly racing. What do you mean? We are finalizing the acquisition for $15 million, effective immediately. Our lawyers have already filed an emergency motion to dissolve his fraudulent injunction. This public announcement will make his legal position untenable. We have a pre-recorded announcement from our CEO ready to go. If you can get it on those screens, we can detonate his reputation and his legal claims simultaneously. The terrace seems to brighten around me. You still want the recipe, even with the injunction. Elena, our legal team has been investigating Harrison's claims. His company is bankrupt, has been for months. This lawsuit is a desperate attempt to steal intellectual property he has no legal claim to. Your recipe predates any possible connection to Blackwell Foods by decades. I stand up, pacing to the terrace railing, energy flooding back into my exhausted body. But the federal investigation, initiated by Harrison's lawyers based on fabricated evidence. Elena, this man is drowning and he's trying to drag you down with him. But we have the resources to fight back, and more importantly, we have the truth. Rebecca's voice takes on an edge of steel. Our announcement will include a full disclosure of Harrison's financial situation, his fraudulent trademark applications, and our legal team's findings about his corporate sabotage. When this goes public, his reputation won't just be damaged, it'll be obliterated. I press my hands against the cool stone railing, watching the estate gardens below where my son's reception continues without me. What do you need me to do? Get our video on those screens during the reception. Make it public, make it witnessed, make it undeniable. Can you do that? I think of Dante, probably still somewhere on the estate despite having his equipment confiscated. I think of the AV booth I noticed during the ceremony, the technical crew who are just doing their jobs, not fighting Harrison's war. Yes, I whisper then stronger. Yes, I can do that. At 8:45 p.m., I stand behind the estate's main ballroom, hidden in an alcove near the service entrance. Through the doorway, I can see the reception in full swing, guests laughing, dancing, celebrating my son's happiness while his mother hides in the shadows like a criminal. In my hand, I clutch the ancient gold locket that belonged to my great-grandmother Lucia. Inside is her photograph, faded but still fierce, her eyes holding the same determination that carried her family through poverty, war, and the long journey to America. I open the locket and whisper to her image, "Nana, I don't know if this is right. I might lose my son tonight, but I cannot lose our family." The weight of 5 generations presses against my chest. Lucia, who created the original recipe in a tiny kitchen in Calabria. My grandmother, who refined it during the Depression, stretching every ingredient to feed her children. My mother, who passed it to me with trembling hands on her deathbed. And me, who was supposed to give it to Marco someday when he was ready to carry the responsibility. But Marco isn't ready. Maybe he never will be. And if I don't act now, there will be nothing left to pass down except the memory of how we let a bully steal our legacy. I pull out my phone and scroll to the contact I programmed earlier, the head AV technician who set up the screens for the ceremony. A young man named David who seemed kind when I spoke to him during setup, who mentioned he has an Italian grandmother who makes the best sauce in Boston. The text is simple. "David, this is Mrs. Rossi, Marco's mother. I have a video that needs to play during the cake cutting. Can you help me honor my family?" The response comes quickly. "Yes, ma'am, send me the file." I attach Rebecca's video and add one final message. "Wait for my signal. When I text now, please play this on all screens." My finger hovers over the send button. Once I press it, there's no going back. Harrison will be destroyed, but the collateral damage might include my relationship with Marco, with Charlotte, with the family I've dreamed of having. But as I look at Lucia's photograph one more time, I hear her voice in my memory. The stories she told about standing up to landlords who tried to cheat her, about protecting her children from men who thought her poverty made her powerless. I may lose my son tonight, but I will not lose our family. I send the video file, then type out the message that will change everything. Now. My thumb hovers over the send button as I watch Harrison take the microphone, beginning his speech about family and tradition and the joining of 2 great legacies. The irony would be funny if it weren't so vicious. In 30 seconds, he'll call for the cake cutting. In 30 seconds, he'll present my tiramisu as a symbol of quaint peasant traditions. In 30 seconds, he'll destroy the last remnant of my contribution to this wedding. But not if I destroy him first. I press send. At 9:15 p.m., the grand ballroom of Ashworth Estate glows like a golden cathedral, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across 500 guests in their finest attire. The dessert presentation is beginning, and Harrison Blackwell IV rises from the head table with the commanding presence of a man who believes he's already won. I stand near the back of the room, my heart hammering against my ribs as I watch him adjust his platinum cufflinks and survey his domain. The navy dress I sewed myself feels like armor now, and Nana Lucia's locket burns warm against my chest, 5 generations of strength flowing through my veins. Harrison taps his champagne flute with a silver knife, the crystal chime cutting through the elegant chatter like a blade. The room gradually quiets, all eyes turning toward the man who spent the last 24 hours systematically destroying my family. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice carries the practiced authority of a corporate boardroom. "Before we conclude this magnificent celebration, I'd like to share a moment that perfectly captures the beautiful contrast between our 2 families." My phone buzzes with David's confirmation text. "Video loaded and ready, Mrs. Rossi, waiting for your signal." Harrison's smile is razor-sharp as he continues, his gaze finding mine across the crowded room. Tonight represents the joining of refined tradition with, shall we say, more humble origins. And I believe there's no better way to illustrate this charming difference than through cuisine itself. The anticipation in the room is palpable, guests leaning forward, phones discreetly raised to capture what they sense will be a memorable moment. Harrison feeds off their attention like a vampire feeds on blood. "Elena," he calls out, his voice dripping with false warmth, "please bring forward your delightful family dessert. I think our guests would appreciate seeing the difference between authentic cuisine and, well, what some might call peasant food." The word peasant echoes through the ballroom like a gunshot. I see Marco flinch, see Charlotte's face flush with embarrassment, see the society matrons exchange knowing glances. This is it, the moment Harrison has been building toward, the public humiliation that will cement my place as the inferior in-law. But as I walk toward the center of the ballroom, my steps steady and sure, I'm not carrying defeat. I'm carrying dynamite. The ballroom falls silent as I approach the head table, every eye in the room fixed on the simple tiramisu I've prepared. The same recipe my great-grandmother created in her tiny kitchen in Calabria, perfected through 5 generations of love and tradition. Harrison's smile grows wider with each step I take, savoring his moment of triumph. "Ah, here we have it," Harrison announces, his voice carrying to every corner of the opulent room. "A perfect example of rustic charm. Tell me, Elena, what exactly makes this particular dessert so special to your family?" I set the tiramisu on the pristine white tablecloth, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "It's my great-grandmother's recipe, Harrison. 5 generations of tradition." "How quaint." He picks up the serving spoon with theatrical delicacy, as if handling something contaminated. "And I'm sure it has great, sentimental value. But you see, ladies and gentlemen, true culinary excellence requires more than sentiment. It requires sophistication, refinement, proper training." Without warning, Harrison sweeps his arm across the table, sending my tiramisu crashing to the marble floor. Mascarpone and espresso-soaked ladyfingers explode across the pristine surface, the ceramic dish shattering into a dozen pieces. Gasps echo through the ballroom as 500 guests witness the calculated destruction. "This peasant garbage isn't fit for my dogs." Harrison's voice booms through the silent ballroom, his mask of civility finally dropping to reveal the cruel bully beneath. This is exactly the kind of inferior thinking that Marco's children must never be exposed to. The silence that follows is deafening. I can hear my own heartbeat, can feel the shock radiating from the crowd like heat from a fire. Marco's face has gone white as paper, and Charlotte covers her mouth with her hands, horrified by her father's public cruelty. But I don't cry, I don't flinch. Instead, I walk calmly to the microphone Harrison has just abandoned, my footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. My fingers close around Nana Lucia's locket one final time before I speak. "Thank you for that demonstration, Harrison." My voice carries clearly through the ballroom sound system. "You've just shown everyone exactly who you really are." I stand at the microphone, looking out at 500 faces frozen in shock and anticipation. The massive screens Harrison insisted on for his cinematic wedding experience glow behind me, ready to deliver the justice he never saw coming. "Ladies and gentlemen," I begin, my voice steady and clear, "I believe Mr. Blackwell was just explaining the difference between authentic cuisine and, what did he call it? Peasant food." I pull out my phone with deliberate slowness, making sure every guest can see my next move. Perhaps Mr. Chen from Meridian Foods can enlighten us about the true value of family traditions. I send the text, just 3 letters, "Now." The screens behind me flicker to life, and suddenly Rebecca Chen's face fills every monitor in the ballroom. Her voice booms through the sound system with crystal clarity. "Good evening. I'm Rebecca Chen, CEO of Meridian Foods Corporation. I'm delighted to announce our acquisition of the exclusive worldwide rights to the Amoretti family recipe from its creator, Elena Rossi, for $15 million. The ballroom erupts in gasps and murmurs. I watch Harrison's face drain of all color as the number, 15 million, echoes through the room like thunder. Rebecca continues on screen. "We chose Mrs. Rossi over several competing offers because of her integrity and the extraordinary quality of her family's 5-generation legacy. The Amoretti recipe represents exactly the kind of authentic, artisanal excellence Meridian Foods is proud to preserve." Harrison staggers backward, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Around the room, phones are already out, recording everything, capturing his complete shock for posterity. "You see, Harrison," I say, turning to face him directly, "while you were busy calling my family's legacy peasant garbage, the food industry was recognizing its true worth. $15 million to be exact." The crowd's murmur grows louder. a buzz of excitement and disbelief rippling through the elite gathering. I can see society reporters frantically taking notes, their eyes bright with the scent of a spectacular story. Rebecca's video continues, and her next words hit Harrison like a sledgehammer to the chest. We were particularly impressed by Mrs. Rossi's professionalism in rejecting the unethical approaches from certain competitors who attempted corporate espionage to steal her intellectual property. The screen shifts to display official documents, Harrison's fraudulent trademark applications, his bankruptcy filings, his desperate attempts to steal what he couldn't create. Every piece of evidence I thought was destroyed, now broadcast to his entire industry. Our investigation revealed that Blackwell Foods has been insolvent for 8 months. Rebecca's voice continues relentlessly. And that Mr. Harrison Blackwell attempted to fraudulently trademark Mrs. Rossi's family recipe using information obtained through deception. Harrison's legs give out, and he collapses into his chair, his face now gray as ash. Around the ballroom, his business associates and society friends are pulling out their phones, some recording, others making frantic calls. The man who commanded this room just minutes ago now looks like a broken puppet. The Federal Trade Commission has been notified of Mr. Blackwell's fraudulent trademark applications, Rebecca announces, and Meridian Foods will be pursuing full legal remedies for attempted corporate theft. I lean into the microphone, my voice carrying the authority of 5 generations of strong women. You called my family's legacy peasant garbage, Harrison, but it's worth more than your entire bankrupt company. You're not a creator, you're just a thief who got caught. The ballroom buzzes with whispered conversations as the full scope of Harrison's deception becomes clear. Board members from various companies are already making calls, investors are calculating losses, and the society reporters are composing headlines that will destroy what's left of his reputation. I watch Harrison attempt to stand, his hands shaking as he grips the table for support. This is a misunderstanding, he stammers, but his voice barely carries beyond the head table. The only misunderstanding, I reply, is thinking that peasants don't fight back. The screens fade to black, but the impact of Rebecca's announcement continues to reverberate through the ballroom like aftershocks from an earthquake. I step away from the microphone and walk directly to where Marco stands frozen, his face a mixture of shock, admiration, and dawning understanding. Marco, my darling son, I say, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear, your mother may be a peasant, but peasants know the value of hard work, family honor, and keeping our word. These are lessons your children will learn. Tears stream down his face as he pulls me into a fierce embrace. Mama, I'm so sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have fought for you. You're young, caro mio. You're learning. But now you know our family doesn't surrender to bullies. Charlotte appears beside us, her own eyes bright with tears. For a moment, I worry she'll blame me for destroying her father, but instead she throws her arms around both Marco and me. Mrs. Rossi, Elena, I'm so proud to be part of your family. Her voice shakes with emotion. What my father did was unforgivable, and what you just did was magnificent. I cup her face in my hands, seeing not Harrison's daughter but my new daughter, the girl who will carry our traditions forward. Welcome to the family, sweetheart. Real family protects each other. The crowd around us has grown, guests approaching with congratulations and requests for photos. But I barely notice them because I'm announcing something that matters more than money. In honor of this evening, I'm establishing the Marco Rossi Culinary Scholarship, funded by tonight's success, to help young people from working families pursue their dreams in the food industry. The applause that follows is thunderous, genuine, filled with the kind of respect that can't be bought or stolen. As I look around at the faces surrounding us, some shocked, some delighted, all captivated by the evening's dramatic turn, I realize I've not only saved my family's legacy, but transformed it into something larger. Harrison finally manages to stand, his expensive tuxedo wrinkled and his face flushed with desperate fury. He stumbles toward the microphone, pushing past guests who step aside with barely concealed disgust. This is all lies, he shouts, his voice cracking with panic. She's been planning this from the beginning. She used Marco to steal my business secrets. The accusation hangs in the air for exactly 3 seconds before the laughter begins. Soft chuckles from the back of the room grow into open laughter as 500 people process the absurdity of a bankrupt man claiming theft from a woman he just called a peasant. "Your business secrets?" I ask, my voice carrying clearly without the microphone. "Harrison, your company has been worthless for months. What exactly did I steal?" "Your debt." "I had plans, investors. The trademark applications were just preliminary." "The trademark applications were fraud," I interrupt, my voice sharp as a blade. "You tried to steal my family's recipe using my son's love as a weapon. You failed." Harrison's eyes dart around the room, searching for allies, for support, for anyone who might believe his desperate lies. But he finds only cold stares and turned backs. Board members from his own company are huddled in urgent conversation, and I catch fragments of words like liability and immediate removal. "You don't understand," Harrison pleads, his voice becoming shrill. "I needed that recipe. The company is hemorrhaging money, and the banks are calling in loans, and I just needed." He stops abruptly, realizing he's just confessed to attempted theft in front of 500 witnesses, including journalists who are recording every word. The silence that follows is absolute, broken only by the soft clicks of phone cameras capturing his complete destruction. A man in an expensive suit approaches the head table. I recognize him from the business magazines as Harrison's board chairman. "Harrison, you're relieved of all duties effective immediately. Security will escort you out." As if summoned by magic, 2 discreet security guards appear at Harrison's elbows. The man who commanded this room an hour ago is led away like a common criminal, his protests echoing weakly as he disappears through the service entrance. As the evening reaches its natural conclusion and guests begin to filter out, sharing phone numbers and promising to stay in touch, I find myself on the estate's stone terrace with Marco and Charlotte. The night air is soft and warm, filled with the scent of roses and the distant sound of laughter. I pull out the gold locket I've carried all evening, opening it to reveal the faded photograph of my great-grandmother Lucia. Her stern face looks up at us, and I can almost hear her voice carried on the evening breeze. "Marco, Charlotte, I want you to see something." I hold the locket so they can both see the photograph. This is Lucia Amoretti, my great-grandmother. She created our recipe in 1923 in a tiny kitchen in Calabria with ingredients she could barely afford. Marco touches the locket gently, his eyes fixed on his ancestor's face. "She looks strong." She had to be. She protected her family through poverty, war, and the journey to America. She passed the recipe to her daughter, who passed it to my mother, who passed it to me. I close the locket and press it into Charlotte's hands. "And now it's yours to protect." Charlotte's eyes widen. "Elena, I can't. This belongs to your family." "You are my family now. And someday you'll pass this to your daughter, and she'll pass it to hers." That's how traditions survive, not through recipes written on paper, but through love passed from one generation to the next. The sound of applause draws our attention back to the ballroom, where guests are still celebrating, still talking about the evening's dramatic events. Through the tall windows, I can see people sampling small portions of tiramisu that the catering staff managed to salvage from my original preparation. The dessert Harrison called peasant garbage, now being savored by Boston's elite. "You know what the best part is?" Marco asks, his arm around both his wife and his mother. "Tomorrow morning, every food magazine in the country will be calling you, the woman who stood up to corporate bullying and won." I smile, thinking of the interviews I'll give, the story that will inspire other families to protect their traditions, the scholarship that will help young people achieve their dreams. "Your great-great-grandmother would be proud, Marco. Tonight, we didn't just save our recipe. We proved that family legacy is worth fighting for." At 10:00 p.m., I stand in the doorway of the grand ballroom, watching the final guests enjoy their evening. The drama has settled into a warm glow of satisfaction, and the conversations have shifted from shock to celebration. Harrison is gone, erased from his own daughter's wedding as completely as if he'd never existed. Marco and Charlotte move through the crowd together, accepting congratulations and sharing small portions of my tiramisu with anyone who wants to taste the $15 million recipe.
The dessert Harrison destroyed in his rage has been lovingly reconstructed by the estate's pastry chef, who approached me an hour ago with tears in his eyes and an apology for his earlier compliance with Harrison's demands. "Mrs. Rossi," he said, "I've been cooking for 30 years, and I've never seen anyone stand up to a bully like that. Would you teach me to make real tiramisu?" Now I watch him carefully plating small portions, treating each serving with the reverence it deserves. The peasant garbage has become the evening's most sought-after delicacy, with guests asking for the story behind each bite. My phone buzzes constantly with interview requests, business proposals, and messages of support from people who watch the videos already spreading across social media. The hashtag #peasantpower is trending, and food bloggers are calling it the most spectacular takedown in culinary history. But the moment that matters most comes when Charlotte approaches me with a small plate containing the last piece of tiramisu. "This is for you, Elena," she says, her voice soft with emotion. "The woman who taught me that family recipes aren't just about food, they're about courage." I take a bite of my great-grandmother's creation, tasting 5 generations of love and determination. The mascarpone is perfectly smooth, the espresso bold but not bitter, the ladyfingers soaked just enough to melt on the tongue. It tastes like victory. Around me, the ballroom gradually empties as guests drift toward the exit, their phones still buzzing with messages about the evening's events. Tomorrow, Harrison's disgrace will be front-page news in the business journals. His company will be liquidated, his reputation destroyed, his attempt at theft exposed to the entire industry. But tonight, as I watch my son dance with his wife while the last notes of the orchestra fade into silence, I know that some victories are worth more than money. They're worth everything. As the guests savored every bite of her great-grandmother's tiramisu, Elena knew that some victories are worth more than money. They're worth everything.
Elena, thank you for sharing your incredible story of turning humiliation into triumph. This teaches us that family legacies are priceless weapons against bullies who undervalue them. True worth comes from generations of love, not stolen secrets. What would you have done in Elena's shoes? Comment below, and if this moved you, like and subscribe for more. I'm Eliza Quinn, and remember, here on Wedding Day Justice, veils off, justice on.